Hi everybody, welcome to my channel So Stylish with Elsabe. This week on our Tuesday tips we are carrying on with our decorative stitches. Last week I spoke to you about what you need to look at when you are going to be doing your decorative stitches, how to stabilize it, considering the stitch as well, the density of the stitch compared to the fabric that you're going to be working with. So now I'm just going to take you through a little bit of sewing. I'm just going to do one recipe. I've already done a couple of samples to talk you through, but I want you to also go look now what stitches is on your machine and then decide what you want to play with, because you can literally go and use your practical stitches, your satin stitches, floral stitches, anything like that to create your own stitch recipe. Now you'll hear me repeating and talking about stitch recipes. Now if you go and Google stitch recipes, it will most probably take you to a Benina stitch recipe, because Benina is well known for having all these stitch recipe information available for us. So go and have a look. I am going to put a link for you in my information box at the bottom as well, with just with a link where you can go to a site where they give you a couple of ideas for stitch recipes, and then just follow along with it. It is so nice to have that information and to print it and to just put it in a little bit of a reference file. I love working with a reference file, because once I've done something and I really think this is something I'm going to be using, like all my samples that I have over here, we're going to put the number of the stitch on there and then also put it in the file. And that's just if I really do a little project for myself and I want to add decorative work to that project. I've already got a couple of samples that I can go and have a look at. So this is now where the fun part is, because you are going to be stitching out recipes. Some of them will work together, some of them won't work together, but that is now your trial and error that you're going to be doing, and work with what's on your machine. Like I mentioned, some of us have lots of decorative stitches, but then we also have those of you that's got your mechanical machine, that's got your practical stitches. And because you are someone that only works with practical stitches, you don't really work with decorative. But I'm going to show you, if you just use a couple of that practical stitches, how you can also build up a stitch recipe that you can go and use. Now again, when I'm sewing, I really try and do stuff on my clothing. I'm not someone that's going to be going and using it on anything else, but you can really go and make a little cosmetic bag. You can go and make a cushion, anything like that, and add your decorative stitches, and you will see it just takes it to the next level. It almost zhuzhes it up for you when you're working with the decorative stitches. Now my machine, I've already got a variegated cotton. I've got 100% mercerized cotton on there. Last week we did speak about the threads as well, so if you missed that, please go back and go look at all the threads and the options that's available there. But just to show it nicely up on the white fabric, I've put a pink variegated thread so you can see what it looks like, and it almost goes from a pinky to a purpley to a light like a pastel pink as well. So that variegation in the thread also adds to the decorative stitch. I'm going to be working on just a plain, it's almost like a cotton that I'm working on, and I've gone and I've stabilized the back. And what I've added at the back is really my wash away or water soluble stabilizer. Now with the water soluble, why I use it, I sew clothing. I don't want stabilizer left behind in my stitches. So I want this to dissolve. And as soon as I add water to it, it is going to dissolve, and all it's going to leave behind is really my beautiful stitches on my garment that I'm working with. Now, last week what I did mention, that if you do not go and stabilize, or you're not working with the right stitch for the density of your fabric, let's say you're working on a lightweight fabric, then you are going to pick up problems. So we've always got to consider, what stitch can I go and use? So your georgettes, your softer clothing fabrics, especially our summer fabrics, if you do want to do stitches, stabilize. 2 layers of stabilizer. Look at your stitch density. Rather open stitches than using a satin stitch, for instance, because what's going to happen, and we've actually done a sample and I'm actually adding the photo for you now as well. This is what happens if your stabilizing is incorrect. Can you see the pull on that fabric, the puckering? It's almost tunneling the fabric for me. So that is really a no-no. We don't want that happening on there. And then if you are working on the softer fabrics and you do find that it is still puckering even though you've stabilized, I would suggest go and try a lower tension on your machine. Just go to your top tension and just lower it by going maybe one down and do another test. So you can test it until you're happy with the result that you have on there. So this is really a fun project that we are going to be doing with you. Now, mine will always be on my clothing that I mentioned. And if you look at the photo I'm sharing now, I actually found this on the internet. It's not my photo, but look at what it can do to a plain garment. It actually just makes it look, I don't know, just zhuzhes it up almost, if I can use that word. So it really makes it beautiful for us. Now, if you're going to be doing it on clothing, you can already work on a garment that you have. You can go and, if you are sewing your own garments, you can also look at adding it to that. Or if you just want to do a small sample, you can go and do it on a piece of fabric like what I'm doing and go and make a little pouch out of it or a cosmetic bag out of it, anything like that. But you do need to go and test and see what is going to work. Now, what I've done with my fabric, I've done my 2 layers of stabilizer. I'm working with my wash away, and if you see, it's actually on my fabric, it's not flopping around. I go and use the Madeira, which is a temporary spray adhesive. The Madeira temporary spray adhesive will dissolve by itself. It doesn't leave any sticky residue on your fabric, and it doesn't push in any of that glue into your bobbin system. We've always got to be careful when we are working with spray adhesives. There's a lot on the market, but not all of them are good for your machine, so please be aware of that. Now, mine I know will either wash out if I wash it beforehand, let's say if it's a garment, or after about a day or 2, I find that it just dissolves in any case. Now, I'm going to work on a strip of fabric, and if you look at my strip of fabric, I've drawn a little line on there. I've started with a guideline where I want to start every time where I'm sewing. Now you can go and draw lines down vertically as well if you want to space them evenly. But I might have a smaller area where I'm going to be working, so I want them to be closer to each other as well. So go and draw those guidelines for yourself however you want. I've just gone and drawn a beginning line for myself because I'm going to use the edge of my foot to actually guide after I've done my first row of stitching. Now, what I do if I do work a narrow stitch recipe, I try and start with the center pattern because, like I said, I am using my foot as the guide, so I do that center pattern. You can also just go and draw one line for yourself, and from there I'm going to work one to the left, one to the right, one to the left, one to the right, all the time until I've built it up however wide I want it to be. And you'll see I'm going to be working a lot closer to what we've got here. But looking at this pattern that we've done, all our mechanical machines really have the triple straight stitch. We do have our zigzag on there, and with the zigzag, remember, you can go and change it. You can go and make the stitch width a bit wider or a little bit narrow. Just again, be aware if the width is changed wider, you might have a bit of puckering or tunneling. And then I can also change the stitch length. Go a lot closer with my stitch length to a smaller number, and I can go and create a satin stitch again with that as well. And then basically, I would say most of our mechanical machines will have the honeycomb on them as well. You'll have 1 or 2 satin stitches. So on this sample, I'm going to actually put a satin stitch in there to show you how you can build it up. So even just having those couple of stitches, you can go and change it. And just imagine if I've done this on a piece of fabric, it can either run like the photo I've shown you down the center of the body, it can be on a collar. I can go and create a little, I'm just going to do this, a little bit of detail on a cuff. I just want to fold it so you can see. Let's hold it like that. I can even go and add a little bit of detail on a cuff. I can do it around a neckline. It can be done on my ready to wear clothing. It can be already added, or I can add it to whatever I'm making. Even at the bottom of a skirt, if you are going to make a beautiful skirt, your hemline, you can go and do that on the skirt or the dress hemline, which will also just finish it off. Just imagine a beautiful linen skirt or a linen dress and just having a bit of detail at the bottom. And you can go add color, or again you can go tone on tone. So if you're working with a white or a cream linen, you can go and do your stitching in a white or a cream so that it's not popping out, but the detail is there so that if someone is closer to you, they can actually see that beautiful finish on there, or just do it maybe one shade darker. So can you see the options when we start working, what I've got to consider, how I want that to work out for the project that I'm working on. Now with this one, I've gone and done a longer line because I am going to be playing a little bit more so that I can show you afterwards a couple more stitches. But I'm going to start on that line, I'm going to be sewing down, and I will go afterwards and I will just iron out this line for myself. I'm working with a heat erasable pen, so again, if it's on my garment, I know when I press it, it's just going to disappear as well. So I'm going to start in a little bit, and I'm going to start with, let's start with our honeycomb. I just want to show you because I know everybody's got the honeycomb, and you can start with a zigzag. You can really go and play with what you have on your machine. But what I'm going to do, because I want everyone to start on that line, I'm going to go and I'm going to add, let's just run it about there. I'm going to run it there because I'm sitting from the side, so I've just got to get some sort of guideline for myself, otherwise I'm going to be sewing very, very skew. So I'm going to use the line on my table, and I'm making sure that that's going to go down in that line where I'm going to start. And all I'm going to do now, I'm just going to do my honeycomb stitch. Then my first row of stitches is done now. So now I can decide, what do I want to do next? Am I going to maybe do a satin stitch immediately? But I think between my satin stitch and this one, guys, I'm just looking, can you see it? We can really play with this. I haven't even planned this out because I love getting the surprise of whatever I'm going to be sewing. But let's go and do, I think I'm going to do a satin stitch. Let's do a little satin stitch for you. This again is a stitch that will be on most of your mechanical machines. Just make sure that when you're working with satin stitches, put your stitch length down almost to your buttonhole setting, and that will give you a denser stitch out. Otherwise it's going to show up as a zigzag, just a fancy zigzag almost. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the side of my presser foot to actually guide it, and I just want to see where I'm going to place this. Again, I'm going to start with, I'm going to add it about there. I'll run it halfway under that presser foot, and now what you'll see, again, I'm making sure I'm starting on that line where I wanted to start. And this is really important, especially on ready to wear. If you are making it yourself, you can always go into your seam allowance even if you want to, because you can sew it into the seam allowance. Ready to wear, we've got to be careful. So rather start at a point that you know everything's going to be even, and if it's a specific pattern that I want to mirror on this side and on that side, again I want to start on one spot where I know it's going to be even. Now I'm using the edge of my foot there, and I'm going to make sure my pattern is running just past that edge. So let's go see. So even if my satin stitch goes slightly over this stitch, I'm not too worried. I'm doing a narrow pattern now for you. I wanted to show you this one. Again, you would have drawn lines and you would have decided how you are spacing it. It all depends on what you are planning. So I'm going to carry on and sew the satin stitch to the bottom or to the edge. Just be aware, if we work with a satin stitch, please don't go and sew full speed. A satin stitch needs time to actually give us that perfect stitch. So rather go a little bit slower. If you're going slow and fast, you also see gaps in your satin stitch. So it's got to be an even speed as well. I've seen where people are really going fast, slow, and as soon as it picks up speed, it always opens up a little bit more. So I don't have an even stitch. So again, something we've got to look at when working with satin stitches. Now if we look at that, can you see how beautiful the variegated thread is showing on the satin stitches? Now I've done one on this side, so now I'm going to do the other one on that side, and I want to be aware that I do start exactly on that line so that my pattern will almost be mirroring itself. Now here it can be maybe a bit of a problem if you don't have a mirror image on your machine, that setting, because that means you will have to rather start from the bottom and then work it up. if I'm starting from the bottom, wherever I've ended with that stitch, I would go and draw a line for myself as well on this edge, not just on that edge. My machine does have a mirror image, so I'm just going to mirror image it. Now, this is really a stitch that's got no, for me, if I look at it, really not a left or a right. So it's not going to have such an effect on it. It's just that step over there that we do want to start closest to our honeycomb stitch. And now I'm going to use this side of my foot to actually guide it. And again, I'm going to place this exactly where I was guiding it on that side of my presser foot. And I'm going to make sure when my needle goes down, I just want to make sure needle down. And my presser foot down, I just want to get it up again. It looks basically on the same spot. So now I'm ready to start with the other side. And please make sure that, again, you start with the full stitch. Sometimes what can happen if you stopped halfway in a stitch, it picks it up halfway on the other side. So make sure you've completed a full pattern before you start. Or on your mechanical machine, just turn your dial, go off the stitch and go back to that stitch again, and automatically it will be at the beginning point of your of that stitch that you're going to sew. On computerized machines, you can go ahead and just press your pattern begin, so it jumps to the beginning of the pattern again. But it's really important. I don't want to start halfway or carry on halfway in a stitch that I've ended here. Alright, so now I'm going to tell you one of the things that you have to consider, which I didn't do because we were recording. Make sure your bobbin is full. You can see what happened, my bobbin thread ran out. So now I'm sitting halfway in a pattern, and I don't want to go and pick everything because I might have all these little holes already created, or that it's made holes in my fabric already. So I don't want to go and unpick or anything like that. So I've got to pick it up where it stopped. Now, in order for me to pick it up, and I'm glad it's happened because now I can tell you how to do it. In order for me to pick it up, my pattern starts sewing, like you can see on the right hand side there. So I'm going to have to, on a piece of fabric, just go and do that right hand side stitch, and as soon as it moves over to form the first stitch for the left hand pattern that's on this little design that I have, I'm going to stop here and I'm going to go and put my piece of fabric back again, and I'm going to make sure that my needle goes down exactly on that left side there. What I'm going to do afterwards, because we can't go and tie it off or reverse stitch or anything like that, I'm going to just pull my threads to the back afterwards, and I'll just give it a little knot on that area. So I've got to sew slow now, so I can just first create that first pattern. So let me just go and sew that. And I'm going to go slow, and I can see, if you guys look at that, can you see it just formed the first stitch on the left hand side of that pattern. So I want to make sure that I go and do one stitch there so that I can go and put my needle exactly in there to pick it up. So let's see, I've got to go slow. Oops, I've just gone one past because I'm busy talking to you, but that should work. I should, if I'm one stitch, one of the little zigzag stitches short, I won't be too bad. So I'm going to go and place my needle exactly on that area, and just take your time getting it in the right position. Okay, I'm happy with it where it is. Now I'm picking up my pattern again. Those threads will just be pulled back to the bottom. So let me go finish this pattern to the end, and then we can look at what it looks like. As you can see over there now, can you see where I picked it up? It continued with my pattern perfectly. I can see this maybe a millimeter over there, but I'm not too stressed about it, because what I can do when I'm not just going to pull the thread back, I'm actually going to just maybe do another stitch in there, and I'm just going to pull it down again to the back. There we go. So I am happy with that. You won't even, if you're going to see this on a top or anything like that, you won't even know that I've run out of bobbin thread. So it's good to make these mistakes, because then it reminds me to tell you about how to fix it as well. So now I'm going to look at the next design, and we are still busy with our practical stitches that we'll find on our mechanical machines. And I'm just going to again bring it down. So I'm starting exactly on that point. And again, I can decide to space it, or I can try and sew it right next to that stitch, so it almost looks like it's part of that stitch. If I do that, I will obviously have to go draw a little guideline for myself. I'm going to see if I can get it right next to it, because I just want to do this pattern and I want to almost give it a little bit of a I don't know, just a border to finish it. So I'm going to go on that area over there. I'm going to use the guide of my foot again. I've got a center guide over there, so I'm just going to use that center guide and I'm going to work a triple stitch. So let's go see. I'm going to go quite close with this one. I'm guiding it exactly on that center line, so that the edge of that satin stitch will be almost on the center line of my presser foot. So let me go finish this pattern and then I'll show you. Now I've just done a narrow stitch recipe. So this for me is something that you can also consider to really keep it quite close to each other, instead of if you're looking at this decorative stitches where they are spaced. It really depends what you want to do. This almost gives me the idea that it almost looks like machine embroidery. So for you guys that don't have an embroidery machine, you can still get a beautiful finish. And look again at the variegated thread, the effect that it's giving us as well. On the triple stitch, I just went a little bit longer. I went to a 4 stitch length. The rest I really left on my basic settings as it was, or what it would be recommended for that stitch usually. So can you see how beautiful that looks? Now, if we start looking at doing patterns with our decorative stitches, and this has been sewn out already because it's easier to just show you. Look at that little pattern, for instance. Again, imagine a little top where you've got this going around, or maybe down the center of the pattern, again on the edge of a hem maybe. You can do it on a cuff, on a collar, you can do it on a pocket, anything like that. So here you can see we've done decorative stitches, a little bit of a cross stitch as well. And if you look at it, it's built up with our center pattern, then one left right, one left right again. So that is another one that we've got there. Look at this. You can keep repeating this and creating your own fabric almost. But look at that one as well, just with a couple of stitches. Now there's 2, which makes up the center. And then again, my left, right, building it up however I want to. So you can go and play with your decorative stitches. And like I said, if you're going to put it in your file, just go say what you've done. Go put the stitch number down there, because some of our machines have got such a lot of stitches, and then I want to go do this pattern and I can't remember what pattern I've used. So always advisable to go and put your stitch number on there as well. But going from very decorative to practical stitches, it still looks beautiful no matter what stitch you're going to use. Just make sure that if you're thinking it through, that I don't know, I always also want to say that they are playing together, if I can put it that way. Can you see how much fun we can have when we start playing with decorative stitches? Now, when I was busy sewing here, I immediately thought of this shirt of mine, and I just wanted to show you this. This is actually a ready-to-wear shirt, which I've had forever. So I've got to look at maybe copying this and making another one. But what they've done, they've actually put a bit of lace on the center. And if we look at that as well, it goes where I've got the V opening here. It takes the lace slightly to either side of that opening. Now imagine doing a bit of lace like that, maybe doing a couple of stitches next to the lace, or I've got the sample that I've shown you. Just imagine, and I'm just going to do this. Just imagine that you can go and do this sort of stitching and then split part of the stitching going to the sides of the V as well. Look how beautiful effect we can have with that. And again, it doesn't have to be color, guys. It can really be tone on tone. I can go and do it on white, but I think sometimes having something like this, it just makes it pop a little bit as well. So that is the sort of idea that I've got in my mind when I'm going to make my next top. And I really think I'm going to copy this. I've worn this one. It's almost falling apart, but I just love this top. So I think I'm definitely going to make something with a bit of decorative stitches going down over there. Let me just go and pin this there so we can step back and have a look at it. But I'm just going to do that. And this way my hands are also out of the way. But just imagine a top like that, and we've got all those beautiful decorative stitches going down. I think you can build it up and really make such a beautiful top with this. This one also, just to show you, and I'll be doing at a later stage a video for us where we're doing a little bit of shirring. This one has got shirring on. So once I get to making this top for myself again, I think I'm going to show you guys the shirring. But that is basically all of the stitches that I wanted to show you today. You can go and make endless stitch recipes. I can do hours and hours of sewing and come up with different patterns all the time. So you're now going to go and look what you've got available on your machine. Go play with it. Go build up your stitch recipe. Do a little reference file almost for yourself so that you can see what it looks like. And then remember, I do appreciate it if you do email me some photos. I love seeing what you are doing, and you can email me at alcibi@schuurferdesigns.co.za and just share with me. It's so nice to see what you guys are doing out there. I'm always thinking of stuff to do on this side and share with you, so I do appreciate anything coming from your side as well. I think that is it. So next week we will be looking again at, maybe I'll just do a little project, and we are going to be looking at also doing decorative stitches with our twin needle, and we'll also look at when we are going to be working with a wing needle as well. So some more decorative work coming up in our next Tuesday tips. But that is all from me for this week. Remember that if you're enjoying these videos, I do want you to go and subscribe, and also to go and click on the notification. It's the little bell, and go and choose all so that you can get all the notifications when I do add projects for us, or we do our Tuesday tips and our Friday features. But that is all for this week on our Tuesday tips. I'll see you again next time. Enjoy your sewing this week.